Well, I'm glad you all came back after the world's most fill-in-the-blank marathon yesterday. And if you picked up an outline today, looks like we have a close second place today. Plenty of things to fill in. Although I wanted to bring my notes from last night from Renee. He doesn't give you as many blanks, so you have to get creative where you put it in the margins and going around. So I don't want to hear any more grief about the fill in the blank, like that's so diametrically opposite to Dr. Schlepfer. All right, we're pretty much on the same page. I'll have more to say about Renee in just a minute. But I was very pleased. I'm always glad to be invited, not only to be here, but they also said, if you have any books you want to bring along, be sure and do that. And now Renee was smart. He's speaking on a series that a book is based on, so that's a very good connection. I don't have something like that, so I brought some titles that relate to what we're talking about this week, but they're not named after Solomon or wisdom or anything of that nature. The thing we ended with yesterday was, if you fall, the wise person what? Gets up again, which is a beautiful way to describe the God of second chances. And years ago, I wrote a book called The Promise of the Second Wind, and the subtitle is, It's Never Too Late to Pursue God's Best. So if that struck a chord yesterday about, I've had plenty of falls, but there is a God who loves me with chesed and wants me to pull myself up again. Promise of the second wind. And then this whole idea of wisdom in general is in part, and we'll see this as the week unfolds, because we as people of character, Christ-like character, are trying to impact those that are around us. I did a book more recently called Everyday Influence, and it's essentially a book about our life as influencers, not the online, this is the, makeup to buy influencer, but, I have good Christian character and I'm trying to model that to other people. So Everyday Influence will be that way. And then the third one I brought is kind of the classic. It was the book I had always hoped I was going to be able to write, and it's called Balancing Work and Life. It's a small book. It is the one of only two books I ever did that had a quote-unquote secular publisher to it. Doubleday published these books, and the advantage of that was it was available in all the airports and all the brick and mortar bookstores. There's a concept you can explain to your grandkids, brick and mortar bookstores, But anyway, we'll be talking about this a little bit more today. But those are all available over at the Book Nook, and I hope you take advantage of those. And oh, look who's here. Can we give it up for Mrs. Butterworth, who's here? Yes. My favorite book holder. Okay. Well, as I look at my notes from last night, I was so impressed with Dr. Schlepfer's grasp of the scriptures and the passages that he gave. And I'm going to make some fun now, so let me start by saying it really was a very, very powerful message. However, I want you to know that, if we can all have a little good fun with one another, Renee is a man of many ventures. Have you noticed that? I mean, some people talk about, like me, he makes me look like the old man simpleton, because the most high tech I get is fill in the blank. All right, if that's high tech, then we're all in deep trouble. But anyway, Renee has many adventures, and I am pleased to be the first to announce that Renee is offering a new venture that I want to read the copy of the upcoming brochure. Renee is offering a 7-day cruise on the Sea of Galilee. Begin your journey at the port of Comfortville, where you will board the SS Frederick Jet. See sights like wind, rain, tsunamis, and lots of water. Optional seminars on board will be on fascinating subjects like paddleboarding, creating your own sound effects, and of course, how to collect 3x5 cards. The food is 100% authentic, meaning you'll eat sardines with fish sauce at every meal. Sound good? That's what you call a plant. Rene has come up with the perfect name for his nautical adventure. Ready for it? Sometimes the boat sinks. Cruise lines. Now, for the first 7,000 who sign up, you'll get a free Flawed Follower t-shirt, coffee mug, ashtray, pot holder, and Flawed Follower set of trading cards. Be the first in your cabin to collect all 14. Sign up at sometimestheboatsinks.com, whose motto is, to sail with us, sometimes courage, I am, no fear. And as I say every year, it takes more energy to come up with the first 3 minutes of the message than it does the other 12 months in preparing for what we're going to do today. But anyway, thank you, Rene, for being a good sport. I appreciate that. Now, yesterday, just to review, if we can take all those notes and summarize from my perspective, the salient point, the big idea that we were looking for is Solomon was after not so much a brilliant mind as he was an understanding heart. And let's just take one quick look at what we looked at yesterday, 1 Kings chapter 3, just a verse. And it begins up in verse 6, 3:6. Solomon said, "You have shown great loving kindness to thy servant David, my father." Great loving kindness. One Hebrew word, chesed, H-E-S-E-D, English spelling. And it's this so encompassing concept. And it's brilliant from the perspective that it was Solomon's way of saying, how you cared for my father, I want you to care for me. And in keeping with that, then what I want is not intelligence, it's not riches, it's not stature, it's an understanding heart. And so with that in mind, we launched into this brief biographical sketch of Solomon. But again, to look at what we're doing this week is Solomon and his wisdom, or Solomon and his Proverbs. I hold the traditional view that Solomon's responsible for 3 Old Testament books: Song of Solomon when he was a young man, desperately looking for love rather than a political alliance in his marriages. Middle Age is the book of Proverbs, where he is extolling the wisdom that he has. And I think it's really fascinating, if you are there or beyond, to look at Proverbs as you would a middle-aged person if you are, or as if you were back in your middle age. Remember what we were talking about, what would an older self say to a younger self, that sort of thing. And then the book of Ecclesiastes, I believe, is Solomon's writing as well, which he's writing very near death. He's a much older man at that. So we have 3 different books at 3 different aspects of life. And I think that's really fascinating, because I have to tell you, just on a side note, I'm into a new kick in my life right now. I'm a very voracious reader. Kathy will tell you, I read every day. It's a goal of mine, always reading. And lately, I've come up with a new idea, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I'm not reading anything new. I'm rereading something that I haven't read in 10, 15, or 20 years. And boy, is it fascinating to see what you missed 20 years ago that you pick up now, or all these years I thought it was this. I've been wrong for 20 years. I've been standing up saying, oh, you got to read this because blah, blah, blah. It's not true. I'm a fake. I'm a hypocrite. Shoot me at dawn. But anyway, this whole idea of the different aspects of life is really fascinating. So today and then tomorrow we have the morning off, and then Thursday, today and Thursday, I want to do some word studies on some of the key concepts in the book of Proverbs. So let me introduce today's words with a personal story. We are told that the 3 greatest fears in life are death, snakes, and speaking in public. And it's very true. When I was younger, I was asked to join the faculty of a small Bible college in South Florida that I had just graduated. And they gave me all the courses I felt like that no one else wanted. And one of the courses that they gave me out of the English department is they gave me all the public speaking classes. And we had a max of 20 students per semester. And it was my joy to watch these kids, as nervous as could be, move through the semester and begin to give speeches, and then feel much more comfortable as they left, being able to communicate in a public speaking setting. And what we did is I would give them lectures, give them advice along the way, and we would start with a very small speech, like 3 to 5 minutes long, and then we'd move to one that was 5 to 7 minutes long, and then we'd move to one that was 7 to 10 minutes long, and then the end of the semester, the big time, 12 to 15 minutes, okay? And it was fascinating to me to watch the different kinds of students that I had. And one of the things that I saw very quickly is that because so many people are so frightened about public speaking, these students would spend more time working on the excuses of why they couldn't give their speech rather than working on prep time for the speech. Well, I was young and I was just determined I was going to teach these guys how to speak. And so I just came up with all different ideas, and finally I decided, okay, we'll go the whole motivational route. Okay, we're at the end of the semester, we're going to give an award to Best Speaker of the Year, and we're going to give Most Improved Speaker of the Year. And then be careful, because we're also going to give the Biggest Screw Up of the Year speech, and you don't want to be that one, do you? And I had no idea what I was going to do. And fortunately, on that first semester, God brought into our lives Phil Desmond. Remember that name? It's very well known in public speaking circles. Phil Desmond, because of how he ridiculously blew his last speech at public speaking class. Now we go way back in time where the height of high technology was, listen to this word, cassette tapes. Cassette tapes. Ask your great-grandson what that might be sometime. Great, unbelievable. This is what Phil was going to do, because I was really big on, make your speech memorable. Don't bore us. Boring is a sin. Talk about yourself. Tell us a story. Give us And so Phil came in and he gave his speech, and he's got it all written down on 3x5 cards. Renee, there you go, 3x5 cards, a beautiful link. And 2 sets. He would use one, and then he would give one to me, and I'd sit in the back of the room and critique, okay? So I see him going through, and then I see that he stops where he says, well, we've talked about the resurrection of Christ in a variety of ways, but nobody captures the meaning of the resurrection of Christ like the Bill Gaither Trio in their great song, Because He Lives. Just listen. And he hits the play button, and it's not Because He Lives. It is the Gaither Trio, but it's like Get All Excited and Tell Everybody, another Gaither song. And we all know it. I'm not sure Phil did, but the rest of us all knew it. He played a verse, chorus, second verse, chorus, and suddenly freaks out. Whoa! That's the wrong song. And there's like 20 people in the room going, yes, we know that, dummy. And he stops and he says, oh, I got it on side B. It needed to be on side A. So he flips it over, puts it in, and turns it on. Well, now it's not synced on the other side either. So now we're listening to, who knows what song. It's still the Gaithers. Bill and Gloria showed up. So anyway, but it's not the song that he wants. And he lets it go on, and he lets it go on, and he lets it go on. And he goes, this isn't right, this isn't right. And he's so nervous that he goes to hit the stop button, and his hands are trembling that he hits like 3 buttons at the same time, and the tape starts spewing out of the cassette all onto the floor in front of him. There's all this bare naked tape sitting there, and here's Phil, just frozen in time. I went to the trophy shop and got a perpetual trophy and engraved at the top what is now the coveted semi-annual Phil Desmond Loss of Composure Award, given out every semester afterwards until I left the college for the biggest screw-ups when it came to public speaking. Did they have excuses? Of course, but they just couldn't deliver the goods. Bob Peterson won it the next semester. Bob was very creative. He brought down from his dorm his fish tank, and he drained it, and then he brought it all down, and he set it up in the front of the classroom, and then he had gallon jugs that he kept pouring the water back in, which was helpful because he brought it down empty except for fish splashing back and forth, and he got them in there, the fish were fine, but he got it all filled up, and nobody noticed until several hours later, because he had done this the night before in order to get set for class. The aquarium had apparently a hairline fracture in the fish tank, so the water level was only about a third high when Phil got up there, and that was magnified by the fact that every time he moved, you heard this awkward because the entire front of the classroom is drenched in water. That was an idiot move. He got the semi-annual Phil Desmond Loss of Composure Award as well. Dale Duffman got it the following semester. Important bio of Dale Duffman. This was his first place to sea since he had been released from prison. He was a tough character. And he came in, and the assignment was take a verse of the Bible and illustrate it as you speak. And so Dale decided he was going to go with the verse, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Guess what he brought with him as his visual aid? He had a full-size adult cross and his pet snake twirling through the cross during the entire speech. It was a stretch, but we gave him the award that year because he caused all of us, as the rest of the class, to lose our composure because we thought we were going to die of snake bite. One more, and then I'll move on. Gene Kelso. And Gene, bless his heart, he was the master of excuse. He had more excuses of why he couldn't do this. And finally it came down to this last speech, and I just had a one-on-one with him. I said, hey, Gene, I don't know how else to say this. You got to knock the ball out of the park, or I'm going to see you next semester. You've got to give a good speech. He said, all right, I got an idea. I'm really psyched. I'm going to go for it. So what Gene did is, the night before his speech, he went over to the theater department and got a makeup person to make him up to look like an old man. And then he put on a genuine Bible character looking set of robes and sandals. I'm not talking bathrobe and, he looked at long gray hair and bags under his eye. He looked terrific. And he had set it up in advance with me. He said, look, I'm not going to come in until it's time for my speech. So I'll be in the back. When it's time, you just say, and now, Gene Kelso. And so I do it, and Gene comes walking in very slowly, and he comes to the front of the room, and he goes in just this old man kind of, hello, I am the Apostle Paul. I am the Apostle Paul, and today I'm going to answer the burning question, what was my thorn in the flesh? What was my thorn in the flesh? My thorn. And he stops, and he goes, oh, my thorn. Oh. You know where this is going? He's not reading his notes. He's not acting. He goes one more time, my thorn. Oh. And he passes out, hits the blackboard behind him, slides down, and is lying on the floor. Now, the students are all looking like, way to go, Gene. This is awesome, man. You are going to get an A+ on this. It's so realistic. And I'm looking at the 3x5 cards, Renee, and it's like, I don't see collapse on the floor anywhere. And, and finally somebody up front looks back at me and says, sir, I think he's passed out for real. And we got him revived, and we got his name on the Loss of Composure Award, and he did much better next semester in the class. So anyway, I always think of that public speaking class when I see one of my most favorite words in the English vocabulary that we see often in the book of Proverbs. It's the word sluggard. Doesn't that just sound like a lazy person? What is a sluggard? One who is sluggish. And Solomon has a lot to say about the sluggard and its opposite, the diligent. And so I thought it might be fun and also helpful if we took a look at both of them today for just a little bit, the sluggard and the diligent, because everyone in this room is one or the other or a combination of both, or desperately in need of figuring out how to make this work in their life. Now, some of you already can kind of figure out, if you don't know and you are related to someone here, they'll tell you exactly, oh, you're a sluggard, trust me. Well, I kind of was thinking, but I know, see, you can't even make up your mind. And then others are diligent to a ill effect. Can you say the word workaholic? That sort of thing. What we want to look for today is a godly balance between those two. So, you got to fill in a blank. I can feel it in your bones, all right? So here we go. The sluggards, first of all, are the unproductive. If you would turn with me to Proverbs chapter 20, we'll start there. I hope you took my heed yesterday and brought your Bibles, because we're going to flip around a little bit today. Proverbs chapter 20, we have a nice section about the sluggard, verses after verses, because that's not the way the book of Proverbs usually works. Context is not as critical in the book of Proverbs as it is in the other 65 books. Verse 1 can be talking about one topic, verse 2 can be talking about another, verse 3 a third topic, and none of them really relate to one another necessarily, okay? But here we have a whole medley of verses about the sluggard. The first one is Proverbs 20:13, do not love sleep lest you become poor, open your eyes and you will be satisfied with food. I have a little memory device to help you remember these things, little fun titles. This one I'm calling the nap trap, okay? The nap trap. They are sleepy, all right? Do not love sleep lest you become poor. Open your eyes and be satisfied with food. Now, we already hit an area for balance. There is no heroism in, I haven't slept for days, or I haven't slept comfortably for years, or, sleep is just not essential to me. Yes, it is. Renee was so good last night about all the different aspects of life that need to be wed together in order to be healthy and productive and godly. One of them is sleep. And now you can overdo it by having too much sleep, and you can underdo it by not having enough. When our daughter went off to college, she chose to room with a girlfriend of hers that they knew from the church we were attending. And Kristen was the first person to introduce to the Butterworth family the brand new concept back then, which is how long it goes since Joy was in college, the power nap. Now, the definition of a power nap was, if you would just let me lie down for 11 to 14 minutes, I will be so refreshed and so much better off, I will be very productive for the rest of the afternoon. It was normally like after lunch, kind of a white Anglo siesta kind of thing, okay? The power nap. In concept, it was good. Kristen, bless her heart, never got the wake up at 14 minutes side of it, and slept just about every afternoon that first semester. The full afternoon, waking up just in time for dinner right after she went to sleep after lunch. Now there's an issue there because she couldn't do her homework and she couldn't, so you need to look for balance, all right? How much sleep do you require? You should know that, and you should go after that, okay? I know, we were talking about presidential history yesterday. President Trump apparently does not need a whole lot of sleep because he's up at all hours of the night doing all kinds of things. President Reagan, if he didn't get 7, 8 hours, man, there was trouble. All right? And so they guarded that. Now, is there anything wrong with President Reagan that he requires more sleep? No, he's smart enough to know he needs it. If he was trying to go Trumpian and only go on a couple, 3 hours, who knows what would have happened to the American culture, all right? You get my point. I'm not talking politics. I'm talking about all of us are wired differently, okay? I've always loved sleep, so I have a great soft spot for the sluggard. We're just lovers of sleep. But I realize, you know what? There are a certain amount that I need. If I don't get it, it's really a bad day, right, honey? And if I get it, then we're much better off, okay? And don't save it all for vacation. Some of you are saying, man, I slept more at Cannon Beach than I've slept all year. I mean, think about that. You saved up 51 weeks so that you could sleep like crazy for a week. That's nuts. I mean, what if that was the way you ate? You didn't eat all year, and then 1 week you just ate like crazy. What is that? Well, I know it's a cruise, but anyway, you would just, it's not a healthy way to live your life, okay? Second one, the next verse, 26:13, where it says, the sluggard says there's a lion in the road, a lion in the open square. I call this excuse abuse. Excuse abuse. Sluggards are masters of excuses. Now, that's a pretty good excuse to come up with. I can't come out and be productive because there's a lion in the road. It's so creative that you might miss something obvious. Solomon is not writing this from the jungles of Tanganyika. He is in downtown Jerusalem, for goodness sakes. It's almost as absurd as writing that in the 21st century. Why don't you ever come out of your high-rise in Chicago? There's a lion out there. There's a lion on the road. That's kind of unlikely. Laziness and excuses are Siamese twins. This is downtown Jerusalem, not the jungles of Africa. Okay, number 3, one of my all-time favorite verses in the Bible. Great word picture, 26:14. As the door turns on its hinges, so does the sluggard on his bed. I call this hinge binge. Hinge binge. These people are imbalanced, okay? Now look at that mental picture. You've got a sluggard who is in bed, and he's in bed so much that he really is hinged to it. So the hinge allows him to get up, go to the bathroom, back into bed, like you'd close the door. Then he gets up, have a little breakfast. Oh, it's still kind of early. He's back in bed. He's hinged to his bed. It's like he doesn't go any farther than the door will let, and it's like, wow, what a sad picture. And it really is. And if that describes your life, think about that. That's how you're known. It's just one giant siesta. And then if you think, well, that's good, let's move on to the next point, because that's not me. I'm not hinged to my bed. It begs the question, and please write this down, to what are you hinged? If you believe, like I believe, that a committed Christian demonstrates Christ-likeness and his character by living a balanced life, what is it in your life that is creating imbalance, that you are hinged to? And that opens up all kinds of doors because it can include lots of good things. I'm hinged to reading. If I was reading beyond belief, it's like, hey, there's more to life than just having your nose buried in a book, right? You're hinged to fixing up your car. You're hinged to playing golf. You're hinged to Watching TV. We even got a helpful term now for watching TV. We binge watch. Now, thanks to the way TV is wired, I can watch 7 years of 50 seasons each of, Tom and Jerry cartoons. And and it's like, you've been watching Tom and Jerry for years. I know, it's fantastic. I'm almost ready to start it all over again. There's an issue here, boys and girls. You're hinged to something. You want to have something that gives you balance in your life. Now, when I wrote the Balancing Work and Life book, the last one I told you about, I came up with a series of equilateral triangles, and started out with the oddity that if you're having trouble balancing one thing versus another, the answer is really to add a third thing, which sounds very counterintuitive. But for example, in our lives, think about these two ways we go about life. Some of us are task-oriented people. Others of us are relationship-oriented people. Now, there's people that are way smarter than me and PhDs and psychologists and all this, monitor all these things, and they say this is a legit way to divide the human race, and actually it divides pretty much 50-50. Task-related people are motivated by a task and accomplishing it, all right? If you're a task-oriented person at work, it's like, okay, we've been given an assignment. We got 6 weeks to do this job, so this is what it's going to look like. We're going to have this much done by week 2. We're going to have this much done by week 4. We're going to get the whole thing done by week 5, so we have all week 6 to do any damage control if we missed anything. Then it's going to be great. Relationship-oriented people, they get the same assignment, and they start thinking, I can't do this by myself. I need a team. I need a dream team. I need Frank on computers, and I need Sam on, human resources, and and we're going to do all this, and in 6 weeks we'll have it done, and we'll have a great big party. Relationship people are really into parties, okay? But what's fascinating is they are both effective at achieving their goals. Task-oriented people aren't better than relationship-oriented people in accomplishing, nor are relationship people any better than task-related people. And guess what? I'll let you in on a dark secret. Deep down, we don't believe that. If you're a task-oriented person, you look askance at relationship. They're driving me crazy every time we get together. Let's call a meeting. Let's get everybody together. Let's have deli. Let's bring in bagels. Let's have donuts. It's always food to get everybody in to talk about the team. Relationship is the team. And the relationship people are those task-oriented people. They're dunces. They don't understand the value of other people, and they're all alone. And the task-oriented people say, I'm not alone. I'm going to make a friend. And they just go back and forth, and it's like they never really get it figured out, all right? Hold your place in Proverbs for a second, and let me get into Renee's territory for just 30 or 40 seconds. Go to Mark chapter 6. We looked at this a little bit last night, and he did such a good job of bringing the context. I want to take it just a little bit further out so that you can see what we have here. Mark 6, look at verses 6 and 7. It says, and he wondered at their unbelief. By the way, Mark 6 is a very unusual verse because it actually ends one paragraph and begins another in a single verse. And he wondered at their unbelief. That's the end of the previous paragraph. The next paragraph, which is the last half of verse 6, he was going around the villages teaching, and he summoned the 12 and began to send them out. Okay? Going around teaching, that's his task. If Jesus carried a business card, it would probably read, Jesus of Nazareth, teacher, which is a more humble way of saying God of the universe, creator of all mankind. Just a humble teacher, all right? He went around teaching, and then he summoned the 12. There he begins relationships, okay? So there's task orientation, there's relationship orientation, and then I simply referred you to what we looked at last night in this passage. Just a few hours later, he's going away after the death of John the Baptist to be alone. There's alone time. In the book, I call it attention, connection, and reflection. Okay? Attention to tasks, connection with one another, and reflection, private time alone. If you write those down in an equilateral triangle, that's a great way to get started on not being a sluggard and not being a workaholic. It's just, do I keep those three things in line, in balance with me? Okay? So that's hinge binge. Now we're back in Proverbs chapter 26. Here's verse 15. The sluggard buries his hands in the dish. He is weary of bringing it to his mouth again. I call this fatigue intrigue. Fatigue intrigue. They are lazy. Now, you can interpret this proverb any way you want, but what I see is this guy is so lazy, he can't even feed himself. He's not using knives and forks and spoons and cloth napkins. He's basically feeding himself with his hand, and he gets tired of bringing his hand back up to his mouth and then going back down to the bowl. Is that the most pitiful picture of laziness you've ever seen? Good night. That's worse than a teenager. Unbelievable, all right? That says to me, people who like to start a job, but then don't finish it. Can anybody identify with that? I oftentimes say, think back to home right now. How's your garage look? Uh-oh. How's that room that you don't let anybody else in because you're either going to sell it on eBay or put it in storage, or you're going to, give it to the great-grandkids until they come in 75 years. It's going to stay in that little closet with all that dust. But I'm gonna finish it one of these days. I got an idea. No. Fatigue intrigue. They're too lazy. And then one more in 26, verse 16. The sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can give a discreet answer. This is blind mind. Blind mind. A sluggard, they are in denial. I see this as this guy is so bad off, he doesn't even respond to an intervention. We brought 7 of your closest people together to talk to you about how lazy you are and how you got to get off being hinged to your bed and get working. You guys, you just don't understand. Some of us have been in interventions. We know how it works. It's not always, I'm glad you came because I really have been waiting for you. No, usually there's resistance. What are you talking about? I'm not guilty of that. 7 men who can give a discreet answer say to this guy, you got an issue here. And the lazy guy says, no, I don't. You got the wrong guy, okay? So what are you clinging to that let me say that. What are you clinging to that those close to you are concerned about? Now, maybe it's not an intervention, but maybe it's a concern. It's like, has anybody ever talked to this guy about this? This is really an issue, and this is something that a true friend can do for another friend. It's difficult. It's painful, but it may be necessary. If there's like something in your life that needs to be addressed and you're not dealing with it, you're either lost, it's completely a blind spot, right over your head, or you know it and you're just not doing anything about it. Now, this is all going to come together because we're going to look at the second half now, not just a sluggard, but now we're going to look at the diligent and then see how it all blends together. The diligent are the productive. Now, turn back to Proverbs 21, verses 25 and 26. Proverbs 21, verses 25 and 26. The desire of the sluggard puts him to death, for his hands refuse to work. All day long he is craving, while the righteous gives and does not hold back. The first thing we see about the diligent people they are what I call the doobies. Not the brothers, but the doobies, D-O-B-E-E-S, the doobies. They know the difference between desire and doing. The difference between desire and doing. The sluggard the desire of the sluggard puts him to death, for his hands refuse to work. Now, being a good old Philadelphia boy, I have always been fascinated by the language of the Deep South. They've got terminology that we never used in Philadelphia, but one that's really popular in the South is, hey, you got that assignment for you? Well, I'm fixing to turn it in. Fixin', fascinating word. F-I-X-I-N, no G on the end. Come on now, you're still in the South. I'm fixing to get it done. That means it's not done. There's a desire to do it, but it remains unfinished, okay? So another way to look at the doobies is, are you fixing or are you finishing? Which leads to the question, what in your life is left unfinished? What are you holding back? You know, the classic statement that we've heard for the last 15, 20 years because of the book. What would you do if you weren't afraid? And what are you thinking of doing but not doing? See, the diligent person is the opposite of the sluggard. He's going to move from just fixing to actually engaging in it and then ultimately finishing it, okay? It's a very simple process. And it's sometimes disturbed by technology. Anybody old enough to remember what alarm clocks were like before somebody invented the snooze alarm? Remember how the snooze alarm radically changed our society? What's that mean? Everybody was always late because you got up 15 minutes later than you thought. Why? Well, because I hit the alarm and it was only the snooze button. And I rolled back and then thinking, oh my goodness, you know, and we're back to hinged to our bed. And it was, I'm fixing to get up, but I never did make it. I never did get up. Okay. Now, look at this next one. I got the wrong, the detail person. Here we go. Chapter 6, verses 9 and 10. Chapter 6, verses 9 and 10. How long will you lie down, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. Your poverty will come in like a vagabond and your need like an armed man. Okay? This is the detail person. That means they know laziness occurs more gradually than suddenly. Laziness occurs more gradually than suddenly. Oh, how long will you lie down? When will you arise from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. Now, sleep being the villain in the text, and we can make whatever it is that you are hinged to your villain. The sleep is like, well, I just need a little bit. It's not like when the alarm goes off at 5:30 or 6 a.m. or whenever your alarm goes off. It's not like you say, I'm going to hit that button and I'm going to wake up again in 2 days. No, it's, I just need 5 more minutes. I just need 5 more minutes. And then that gradually takes away what's important in your life. Now, again, you may be in this room and you're not a sluggard. And I'm trying to get you to focus on, well, what is it that you are hinged to? Then you think about, what is that like in your life? What is eroding rather than exploding? I used to do this, now I don't do this as much. You know, most of my dearest friends are my peers, and so most of them are retired. And it's like, what do I do different now that I don't have to go punch a clock or show up at an office? And it's like, well, it's allowed me opportunity to do some things I've never been able to do, but it's also allowed me to become more lazy and get stuck in just a trap. And, you know, you really need to be aware of that, okay? Because when you're hinged to something, it's going to be hard to break free. You can do it, but you got to be very much aware of it, okay? What is the erosion that's going on in your life, okay? Now, chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. Go to the ant, thou sluggard, observe her ways and be wise, which having no chief, officer, or ruler, prepares her food in the summer and gathers her provisions in the harvest. This is the, quote, God is watching, unquote, person. The God is watching person. They work when no one else is looking, okay? And that's a big deal to every person. I mean, I can remember that in my own life, especially in my teen years, and I watched it with my 4 sons as they grew up. It's like, you know, if you believe when you go into the workforce that you only need to work when your boss is watching, you're not going to move up the company ladder very well, and you're not going to do well in this job. Because it's not about only being active when you're being watched, because there's a greater set of eyes that are on you. God's eyes. God knows exactly what you're doing. And so that motivates people to realize, they asked me to do this, I will do this. God is watching me. I work hard no matter what the circumstances. One more, chapter 27, verse 18. Chapter 27, verse 18. He who tends the fig tree will eat its fruit, and he who cares for his master will be honored. This is the honor roll. Diligent people will be honored. And this verse teaches us two reasons why we'll be honored. One, I care about the job. And second, I care about my boss. It's a lot easier to care about the job if you've got one rough and tumble boss. And it's easier to care about a boss if you like that person and your job is difficult. But here, Solomon is saying you do both for honor. You care for your job and you care for your boss. Okay? So that's a blitz at what it looks like to be either a sluggard or be diligent. So I want to just spend a couple last minutes here putting a little application together at what I'm calling a wake-up call. That's supposed to be a play off of being hinged to your bed. Get it? It's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, right. Okay, never mind. 3 things about our wake-up call. Number 1, my work should glorify God. My work should glorify God. Jesus said in Matthew 5:16, "Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven." My work glorifies God. The most simple definition I ever heard as a young person about what it means to glorify God, and you can pick it apart and debate it, but my glorifying God in my job is that I make God look better. Now, theologically, I understand you can't make God look better. God is the best. He is unbetterable. Yet, I am called to glorify God through my good works. Okay? How does God look like? What does God look like based on how I live my life? And that's the beautiful thing. Whether you are here stuck in middle management or whether you're here running your own business or whether you're here, I haven't done work since I retired, 15 years ago. Wherever you are, it's like that's a solid principle. What I do every day, whatever is called my work, should be to glorify God. Secondly, number 2, even God rested on the 7th day. Even God rested on the 7th day. Genesis chapter 2, verse 2, it all started. He rested on the 7th day from all his work, which he has done. Then God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it. God did not rest on the 7th day because he was tired. He rested because he gave us a pattern to follow, that we would work 6 days and then take a day off. And it became part of the 10 Commandments. And I hate to tell you how old I was and how many years I knew the 10 Commandments until I finally read the 10 Commandments in the Deuteronomy passage, where we get a whole other perspective of what keeping the Sabbath is all about. Deuteronomy 5, verses 12 to 15. Observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy, as your Lord commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath of the Lord your God. If you shall not do any work, you or your son, your daughter, your male servant, your female servant, your ox, your donkey, any of your cattle, your sojourner who stays with you, so that your male servant and your female servant may rest as well. Here it is. And you shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out of there by a mighty hand and by an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. My life has been in front of a lot of different businesses talking about this very topic. And I come to this and people squirm, because there's a pride in being told, you know what, I haven't taken a vacation in 15 years. I haven't taken a day off in 20 years. Well, you know what? There's a pattern. There's a prerequisite that leads to. There's something that has transpired before you. There's a group of people that never took a day off, that never took a vacation. Oh, you might know them by their one word name. They were slaves. Now, we can brag about being never taking a day off, but who would brag about, yeah, I'm a slave? Slave is not a happy, happy, joyful word, is it? But that's the role model of someone who says, I don't care what everybody else does. I'm going to get to the top because I'm never going to take a day off. You need to take a day off. If you are hyper diligent, you need to learn that you're going to live longer if you take a day off. You're going to be more productive if you take a day off. And by the way, you're going to obey God if you take a day off. Okay? That's what this is all about. My work should glorify God. Number 2, even God rested on the 7th day. So number 3, rest in the Lord and wait. Psalm 37:7. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Hey, if you're not achieving your goals as fast as you wanted to, you're doing the best you can, you're doing what God wants you to do, okay? You're in a sluggish period, maybe today's just what you need to pick up and decide, when I go home, I'm going to get invested in something new. I'm going to not be hinged to that thing, good or bad, that's keeping me from doing what I'm supposed to do. I mean, this is a very practical message today that will hit everybody in different ways based on how you're living your life right now. But I give it that way because that's exactly what Solomon is doing. The Proverbs are built on poetry and practicality, okay? Hebrew poetry, which an English audience really doesn't understand, but practicality we can all understand. Am I going to be a sluggard, or am I going to be a diligent person, or am I going to be hyper diligent and really in trouble? That's your decision to make. Let's pray. Lord, I ask today for each and every person in this room that we can do a little mental tabulation on where we are with these fascinating topics. Lord, there may be some here that are hinged to their bed and they need to break free from their laziness, however that is required of them. There may be some that are guilty of overzealous workaholism and have never really considered that that is going directly against what God has said. And many circumstances in between. I pray that you would use Solomon's Proverbs to speak to us today in this topic, and that we would have as a result real and significant change in our lives. Thank you, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Everybody said, amen.